The White House reportedly scrambling to root out whoever this senior official claims to be as part of the resistance within the administration, supposedly to protect the country from the president himself. Trump already reportedly seething about aides, talking to Bob Woodward. He wants to know who. Literally, we're hearing stories of people avoiding him right now because of these questions. The anonymous op-ed writer who calls the president amoral, off the rails, reckless, and erratic, as all part of a theory that he is a potential threat to the republic, and people are needing to act to accommodate him and counter him. When the president heard about all this, he raged.
If the failing New York Times has an anonymous editorial, can you believe it? Anonymous, meaning gutless, a gutless editorial.
Then, as the opinion piece began to marinate, the wheels were spinning in Trump's head. Treason? Question mark. He asks in all caps as a tweet. Then made that demand I was telling you about to the New York Times. We have never seen anything like this. I know I've said that before, but this one is worth remembering. Gutless person? Look, that's his opinion. He's fair to call him that. But turning them over, the New York Times he's saying this to him, the government, at once in the name of national security. That is just a wild suggestion, let alone from a president of the United States. And we do hear the White House is closely examining the writing. They're looking for key words that might reveal whom it could be within the ranks, who defied the president. Will they be found? Should they be found? Who is it? It's one of the biggest parlor games going right now. So, what about Donald Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani? He seems to know most things. He's certainly never in doubt. Welcome back to Primetime Counselor.
How are you, Chris?
All right. I get from that initial introduction, this is a long day that we've had here. The substance of the book, you've gone on record and said, this was never said, this story about the president talking to Rudy Giuliani and using terms about diapers and you being a baby. You say it never happened.
I don't say it never happened. I'm telling you it never happened. I have at least up to 8 witnesses now who confirm it, including probably my most trusted security man, Bo Wagner. I know what I've talked to the president about it. I've talked to about 8 people who were there. And I'll tell you exactly what happened. I was on 5 shows right after Access Hollywood. I did them all, which is kind of unusual. The plane waited for me. The campaign plane waited for me. And when I got on the plane, the staff applauded me. The president stood up, said, "Mayor, you weren't tough enough." And then he laughed and he said, you did a great job. Thank you. Nobody could have done what you did. And then he called me over, he put his arm around me, put me close to him, and he whispered something in my ear about how much courage I have. I won't tell you exactly what he said. That's exactly what happened, 100%.
The word diaper was never mentioned.
Word diaper, word baby, criticism, no. Now, here's the tell-all part of this. Bob Woodward never sought to contact me about it. He has some gutless wonder who told him this lie. Okay, he's got a source. But who's the principal in the story? Me. He never interviewed me or any of the other 8 witnesses that were there because he had a nice, juicy little thing he could use to promo his book, make money. And this is the Woodward scheme all the time. That whole press release yesterday includes that stupid story because Woodward had calculated this can sell me books. He doesn't want to get it contradicted.
You don't think Woodward deserves some respect as a journalist and as someone whose word is usually good and reporting is even better?
If he calls and apologizes me, I'll say that. His word's not good.
Why not?
If somebody printed a false story about you, Chris, and he didn't bother to call you, would you have any respect for him? I wouldn't. He didn't call Jay Sekulow either on the Dowd story.
You say that you have 8 sources who counter his narrative.
I don't. Look, on a personal level, I don't need 8 sources. I know what happened.
I hear you, but I'm just saying, you say you want him to turn over his sources, put out the tapes.
I don't want him to turn over his sources. I'd like him to have somebody listen to that tape.
Who?
I don't know, some third party. I don't care who it is.
How about me? I volunteer.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear the tape, and I'd like to know your 8 people.
Oh, I'll tell you my 8 people off the record and maybe on the record at some point.
Well, why not on the record?
Well, I can give you a couple of them, right?
Well, the president's not going to talk to me.
The president,
and your security guy's a little compromised as a source. Just to be fair. I'm saying if there are other people there, put them out there. Let them say this is what happened.
I will put them out there.
Because that's what you guys are asking him to do.
Well, if he puts his out, we'll put ours out, and I may put mine out anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you go first, that's the best way to lead an example.
In fact, Steve Bannon, a couple of days earlier, told a completely opposite story.
Steve
about
Bannon.
Exactly, about the same. I haven't talked to Steve, but he told a completely opposite version of it to someone else, and it was printed very much along the lines that I told you. This is totally false, Chris. Completely, 100% false. Now, why doesn't he call me about it? Why doesn't if he wants if this is a search, if this is Bob Woodward, icon of Washington, search for the truth, you don't call me? You don't call Jay Sekulow when you say Dowd told Mueller that president was lying or would end up in an orange jumpsuit or something like that? Jay Sekulow completely denies it. And Jay says he never called me. I know Jay's number. He knows Jay's number. Woodward has interviewed me for other books. The reason I asked for the tape recording is I know he tapes the conversation.
He does.
Fine. God bless him. He doesn't do what Cohen did. He doesn't lie to you. He does it. I have no problem with that.
Right, but there's no confusing Woodward with Michael Cohen. I mean,
No,
they're
I just
completely
said-
opposite ends of the spectrum. But even bringing him up in the context, Woodward is a
I
man
will not
worthy of
mention-
respect. That's all I'm saying.
Not for me personally, he isn't.
Well, I get what you're saying about your
I
disagreement.
have no respect
right
for a
now.
man who writes a scurrilous thing about me that I'm a baby, I need to be in diapers, and he doesn't call me to ask me my version of it. He doesn't call anybody else to ask their version
No,
of it.
I hear you on that. I hear you on that. That's a fair request.
And I know he did exactly the same thing to my co-counsel.
Well,
Exactly.
but then you have
and then we end up in the promo for the book.
well,
I'm not a fool.
Right, but you're going to have to take up a publisher with that also, right? They are trying to sell books. That's their job.
But
it
Woodward,
doesn't mean.
Woodward is a genius at knowing how to sell books.
But
I don't
there's a
know how
lot
accurate
in this
they are.
book beyond those two stories.
Well, how do I know what's true?
That lend a flavor that is very familiar for those of us that cover this White House. And then that op-ed comes out today that is an echo of exactly the tone, the tenor, and the concerns that are listed in that book. Coincidence?
Maybe yes, maybe it was orchestrated. I don't know.
But what do
Maybe
you
it
make
was
of the
orchestrated.
op-ed today where somebody says, I'm working there right now, I'm a Trump appointee, and we're worried. We have to protect you from him.
Well, number one, I don't know how much of it to believe. Is it a Trump appointee? Is he in the White House? Is he phoning it up? How much is the Times complicit? I mean, the Times is
New
not
York
exactly.
Times is complicit. You think they'd risk their reputation on a kill shot like this if it was proven to be false?
No, no. I don't think so.
Yeah, that's a heavy charge. I got to tell you, I mean, you and I go at it over charges because I feel that you guys invest a lot of confidence in propositions that you like, and you shoot down propositions that you don't like, even with better or equal factual basis. But on this one, for them to be lying about this, for them to put out an anonymous op-ed that nobody exists behind it, you realize what a miscarriage of journalism that would be.
Yes. So you're asking me, do I trust the New York Times? Do I know what they did here? I don't. But do I trust the New York Times? I'm sorry, Chris. I know this shocks you. I do not trust the New York Times.
You believe that this anonymous person either doesn't exist or isn't telling the truth?
I didn't say that. I said I don't know. Oh, I don't think he's telling the truth. But he may be a guy inside the White House. He may be upper level, lower level. Maybe he's in the old executive office building. A whole bunch of other things. But I don't trust anything I read anymore, not after the stuff that's been done to me, the latest one being the great, wonderful, totally honorable Bob Woodward, who will quote a scurrilous thing about a public figure and not ask for their version of it.
I'll tell you what gives me concern about believing what's in the op-ed and what's in the book. Very often, I measure veracity by reaction. I see how people react to stories, and it often tells a lot. What the president has done in reaction to the last 2 days screams concern that he's dealing with the truth. With him going on a hunt in the White House for who talked to Woodward, for him saying the New York Times has to turn over their source to the government as a matter of national security. Do you realize how crazy that notion is to even suggest, let alone from a president?
Chris, I don't know where you're coming from, but
turn over a source to me, I don't like what they said. Chris, it's a matter of national security.
I don't know. We don't know who this man is. We don't know what position he's in. We don't know how sensitive it is. I'm sure he exists. Suppose he's in a very sensitive national security position. This guy is obviously an unhinged guy, a guy without many morals, without any principle. If somebody in my mayor's administration
Right.
wrote this about me,
Right.
I'd want to get him out
Of course you would.
right away.
But you wouldn't have said to the New York Times, give me your source. You have more respect for the First Amendment than that, do you not? Redress of government, the ability to use as political protest your words, even in defiance of those in power. You don't ask for those people to be turned over.
Well, I guess if the New York Times would give me a hint at what level he's at in government, if he's just a lowly person in government without national security information, without top security clearance,
He's a senior official, they say, and he's appointed,
well,
he says, or she says, by Trump.
Then I think it's a national. It is a potential national security
Because
issue.
they're being disrespectful of the president.
No, because the man is working for a person that he describes as an irresponsible president.
Yeah.
A man who should be removed from office.
Right.
And he's working there as a coward rather than coming forward, holding a press conference, telling us who he is, and putting his allegations.
Counter argument: it is an act of conscience to come forward at all. They do so anonymously because they believe they must stay. Because they believe they even compliment some of the things the president's agenda is trying to motivate, and that he or she is needed in there not to be a deep state, but a steady state because
Good lawyer, Chris.
of the president.
Good
That's
lawyer,
what they say.
The guy in my book is a weasel.
Look,
And in any executive situation, anybody at the top would feel that way. If somebody writes something like this, doesn't want to put his name to it.
I get that you would feel like that. The person at the top would feel like that. Certainly the president does. But I'm saying you
I don't
have
want
to
the
be
guy
open to
working
the
for me.
possibility that as a matter of conscience,
Well, if he would
because
write
if they were to
this-
come out, he or
if he-
she,
if-
they'd be a
if he-
huge star. They would be a
if he-
huge star if they came out and said this stuff. They'd be hugely popular. Instead, they're saying they want to keep doing their job.
They want to be a little weasels. How much leaking is he doing? This is a nice relationship with the New York Times that he's got. If the guy would do this to protect the country in his estimation, who
Or
gives
hers.
him the right to decide that? He could easily leak national security information. I mean, easily.
No, I don't think you can jump to that because we
Well, I
know
can.
that he or she came forward and didn't give any national security information.
Well, he didn't need to right now. Who knows what his relationship is with the Times? I don't think the Times would print this if they didn't have a relationship with this guy.
Well, I don't know that we can say that.
I don't know that we
obviously
can
they have
say
to
it
know who
either.
he is or who
Chris,
she is, and they have to
Chris,
have confidence in it because
Chris.
they know people are going to come at them. But think about it. The president hears about it. He says, I want you to give me the person. Then he says in a separate interview, I don't get this whole protest thing. I don't know why we allow it. I mean, can you imagine that notion in any other context? Why do we allow protest in the United States of America? I got a smile on my face, but I'm dying on the inside.
Oh, well, don't die. I really don't want to see that.
Who says that,
you're,
Rudy?
You're too good a friend.
You would never say
that. The reality is that what he's referring to are the protests at the hearing,
right?
Which, if they ever happened in court, people would be put in jail. And it is really an offense to do that because it's interfering with your First Amendment right, my First Amendment right, to hear this thing in a civil way. And I can't help but thinking we are now seeing the total end of any kind of civil United States Senate. I mean, it started with Bork, and Republicans did it to Democrats, and Democrats did it to Republicans. And now we have like a circus town hall meeting in place of an advise and consent hearing, where generally the president is given his choice so long as the guy is qualified.
Or the man or woman is qualified. But I got to tell you, they made it the circus because they allowed these men and women to sit up there and answer nothing. Because when they have the numbers, they want to get their people through. So you have this illusion of something called the canon of judicial independence, which somehow means that this man or woman can't tell you what they think about anything. Then they get on the court and all of a sudden they have a bent. It's BS and we both know it, but the party in power allows it, and so the system continues.
But you would agree that this is both sides. I mean, this is the Kagan
100%.
playbook, the Ginsburg playbook, the Gorsuch
The only one who
playbook.
didn't follow it was Bork. And that's why he got dinged, because he was too honest. And now they all say nothing. So you have Kavanaugh with all this stuff written. And now he says, well, that's what I believed in 1998. Well, I don't really know that I can really take a position on it now. I may come up with a case like that. Yeah, you might. That's why they're asking you whether or not a president could be investigated. Rudy, don't you think that's an important question from this judge? Shouldn't he have to say whether he thinks a president should be investigated?
I believe these things should be more substantive, but I'm not a fool, Chris. I know it's not going to happen because as soon as Bork happened, everybody went into hiding. Bush, Clinton, Bush, and Obama. So Trump here is doing nothing different than they did.
Well, but the context is a little different because it is possible, okay, / probable, and then we'll segue into this topic so you can talk to us about Mueller, that this judge may deal with a case or controversy that involves the president and an investigation. Don't you think he should say whether or not he thinks a president can be investigated? Because he's written that he can't.
I don't think he should. I wouldn't give an indication of how I'd rule on a case before all the facts and circumstances are before me.
But the concept of whether in any case it's possible. You can tell me that.
We're talking about whether the president can be subpoenaed or the president can be indicted.
Investigated at all, he wrote. Civil or criminal. That a president should be relieved of that, immunized.
I actually think that because it is a question that can come for him as a judge, he really can't give an indication before he reads all, unless he has a very firm, non-negotiable position or an unmovable position.
I'm saying the possibility. Don't you think he could speak to the possibility of whether a president can be investigated?
No, I don't think he should. I think he should reserve his decision for the briefs and for the argument in the court.
But he wrote already that a president can't be. Don't you think he has to speak for it when he already wrote what his position is?
If he trapped himself into doing that, he'd have to recuse himself.
The trap is not doing it. The trap is saying, I know I wrote that, but now I can't talk about it. Why would you vote for somebody who wrote that a president can't be investigated, who may see a case where a president's being investigated?
Because you have faith that the man will listen to the facts and circumstances. It's one thing to say something in abstract. It's another thing to stick to the same thing when it actually comes before you and there are facts that argue against it. And the reality is many justices have done that. And many justices, particularly the more right-wing ones, go into the middle. You have very few examples of the left-wing ones, although you do with Frankfurter, eventually a couple of others that were left and they came to the middle, almost conservative.
Look, I got to tell
all
you,
the time.
I mean, do you agree with him, by the way? Do you think that a president can't be investigated?
Of course, yes, I believe a president can be investigated.
Can. You disagree with Kavanaugh?
Well, I disagree with the abstract thing that he said in the article. I don't know how he's going to rule, but I also think that investigation can be circumscribed by the needs of the office, which is why a president can't be indicted, a president can't be subpoenaed.
Right, I get you on that. I get the DOJ guidance. He wrote much more strictly than that, by the way.
Look, among other things, a president has to be investigated for the purpose of possible impeachment.
That's right. That's what's so onerous about this. Because he wrote, well, you can impeach him first. But not if you can't investigate.
Well, then actually that answers the question. I haven't read the article. That answers the question. He's not saying that he can't be investigated for impeachment.
I think that it was actually the weakness in the law review article. That's what it was. And when I read it, that's what jumped out at me. Then I had Better Brains read it, and they said, yes, that's the loophole.
I'll read it again.
He says impeach him first. You can't impeach if you can't investigate.
But he can't possibly mean.
His answer is like a riddle.
His answer probably then contradicts itself.
Yeah, that's why he should talk about it now. Before getting the robe.
And he doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it.
For the rest of his life. Let me ask you something about Mueller, because you may be the guy who's part of the team that brings a case in front of this bench with this judge sitting on it if this plays out a way that you don't want it to.
I'd love it. Only one case in the Supreme Court. I'd love it.
So, but I'm saying,
I wouldn't. I wouldn't because it would be bad for the country.
Well, it would certainly be a controversy that would have us twisted up. Is there progress? We heard reported that some written responses may be allowed from the president and his team to certain questions regarding collusion. Accurate?
Well, yeah. Since we last talked, they responded to us with a concrete, reasonable proposal. We came back to them with a few changes, but not material changes. We are now awaiting their response. I'm hopeful that maybe we're going to get a yes, in which case we can probably move forward with written questions and see if that doesn't satisfy them and satisfy us.
But what about oral interview?
So far, we have not agreed to an oral interview.
Do you think that's sustainable?
It's sure sustainable on Article 2, meaning on the things that would be covered in obstruction. I do believe it's sustainable since they basically can get everything they want on collusion.
Right.
And this was done with Ronald Reagan.
Right, so I understand that aspect of it. But
and by the way, it's under
Woodward
oath.
has quotes about this where Mueller supposedly said, I need to hear him on why he did certain things regarding Comey and other things. I need to hear
Well,
it
let's
from him.
let's say that for argument's sake, that his answers in writing are the same as the answers he gave, to the various interviews, and he's going to see him. I mean, he's got the tape.
Yeah, but it's not the same.
Yes, it is.
No, it
Come
isn't.
on. Yeah, well, okay. Well, then
Talking
he's
to me is different than talking to a Mueller investigator who can slap you with a felony if you lie to them.
Well, they can slap you with a felony if you give the wrong answer.
You and I don't agree on that.
Okay.
But I defer to you because you're the prosecutor, you're the man with the experience and the reputation. But this
And
whole
I'm the
idea
lawyer,
of a
and I'm
perjury
the-
trap,
I'm the
there's
law-
perjury and then there's a perjury trap. One of is really an abuse of prosecutorial discretion. If he
don't-
comes
I
in there
don't-
and he doesn't tell the truth, that's on him, not them.
I don't think. Oh well, yeah. But if they bring him in for a question they know the answer to,
Right.
and they already don't believe him on that answer, then that's a perjury trap.
They'd still have to make
If
a
he's
case for
telling the
perjury
truth.
beyond a reasonable doubt.
No, they don't, because this is just a report, Chris. This is
But
the
then
one
there's no
area.
charge. Then they don't have
Oh,
anything to
come on.
sustain
They could
even a
write-
case for impeachment.
They can write anything they want.
Right,
could
but
say,
they can't prove it, and then you're going to have to prove it in the court of public opinion.
Well, maybe we have to prove it. Maybe they have to prove it to an overwhelmingly Democratic House. That can be not too hard.
Well, it still has to go to a Senate.
They're never going to. The Senate has no chance of ever impeaching him, whether it's Democrat or Republican. You need 67 votes. So let's be realistic. You're
Right,
not gonna
that's
get
why I'm
67
saying,
votes.
what are you so worried about? Put him in the chair.
I'm not worried about anything. I don't want 10 months of a long, protracted impeachment investigation when you don't need one if you're just careful as a lawyer.
Well, but
He didn't do
by
anything
careful,
wrong.
you mean not doing what he says he wants to do most of all, which is talk to Mueller and give the people the answers they deserve
Of course
to hear.
he does, but I'm his lawyer. I'm supposed to. Jay and I and our team are supposed to protect him, like we would protect you.
What about, let me ask you one last thing. Any sense of time horizon on this?
Yeah, there are some dates in it. They're all pretty fast. I can't give them to you exactly because they're subject to negotiation right now. But
Christmas, before
they're-
Christmas?
Oh, no, before the election.
Oh, all right,
Well
good to
before
know.
the election.
Good to know. I'll take
Yeah.
that. That's good enough. It's more than I
like
thought
that.
I was going to get. Rudy Giuliani, thank you very much
Chris,
for the
as
arguments
usual.
and the information. Appreciate it.
Thank you.